because of all the excitement with a Toronto team, a Canadian teaming in the NBA final. But exciting night, the St. Louis Blues, and I've been a hockey fan for a long time.
Yep.
They came in the league in 1967, and for the first time, they won the Stanley Cup, 7 games. They did it in Boston, and the cool thing is that there's 13 Canadian players on the team, and 14 if you include Alex Dean, who actually is born in Winnipeg. His dad was from Sweden. But 3 guys from Saskatchewan. Ryan O'Reilly, the MVP, is from Ontario. Jordan Biddington, the goaltender, he's from Ontario. The coach, Craig Berube, is from Alberta. So it was kind of like a Canadian
team. Yeah.
So it was exciting.
Even though the Leafs weren't there, we kind of were still represented.
There was a couple of former Maple Leafs on the St. Louis Blues as well. And the thing about that's really interesting, you probably could make a movie about this, is they were the worst team in the NHL in January. They had to fight to get into the playoffs, and then they just got going. And it was I didn't expect them to win, to be honest. I thought Boston was going to hoist the Stanley Cup, but way to go to the St. Louis Blues.
Yay.
And they're excited down in St. Louis.
And a team that we are expecting to win tonight are the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, I hope so.
We're rooting you guys on. We know the game starts very soon, so we are very excited for the Raptors. Well, speaking of sports, Marc Gasol, who's on the Raptors, will be playing the game tonight. Great, interesting tidbit of information about what he does on his off time.
Yeah, and he's one of those players that they brought in. Of course, Kawhi Leonard came in, and Danny Green as well. This year, they're going to go for it. I like Marc Gasol. He's a great player, 7-foot center, but he's also humanitarian.
Yeah.
Him and his brother have started a charity that they help, children all around the world, and he became, in a sense, angry and very concerned about all the people that were dying trying to come to Europe, from Africa and other places where war is going on. And so he actually got on one of those rescue ships.
Yeah, and what I love about this is when you talk about the 24-hour news cycle, many of us have forgotten about the fact that there are still constantly migrants that are trying to get out of their homelands, out of maybe, precarious situations, violent situations, and trying to reach a country of safety. And Italy is one of those places. A lot of Libyan migrants are trying to flee to Italy, and Italy has kind of closed their doors. And Marc Gasol has really stepped up and said, this has to stop happening. And as you saw, just visuals of him rescuing a woman recently, but just saying we need to be aware of this issue that still continues to happen in our waters around this world.
And Marc did not do this for any other reason. It's not a concern. In fact, he was very low-key, didn't talk about it, but the only reason he brought the, publicly is because he felt that this was such an important issue that it needs to be talked about. So way to go, Marc Gasol.
Yeah, well, the story of God is something we like to tell here every single day. Sometimes the stories are heartbreaking, which is true of my guest today. Jonathan Pitts unexpectedly lost his wife, the love of his life, last year, Winter Pitts. I get to sit down with him shortly. This is going to be an interview you're going to want to watch as he talks about just now raising 4 young girls as a single dad.
Yeah, she was an amazing lady. And of course, we got to know her here. Robbie Simons will also join us, and he continues his series on hope. And boy, we need that. And we look forward to that coming up in a few minutes as well.
But first, there are almost 2 million people going hungry in Israel right now. Crossroads Cares Relief and Development has partnered with Lekit Israel as they try to get food into the hands of those who need it most.
Now, by harvesting, all the supplies, the agriculture thing, it's really kind of tied into a biblical story as well. And they're distributing to the most vulnerable people throughout that country. Take a look at this.
Even children in this area have died and the cause of death was lack of nutrition.
Gideon Ben-Ami is committed to fulfilling one of the most basic human rights, that food should be accessible to everyone. Gideon is the co-manager of Pesia's Kitchen, a non-profit which acts as a branch of the food bank in South Tel Aviv, Israel. Today, he is working out of one of his partnering organizations, a house for the homeless. From here, they distribute hot meals and baked goods to the children of refugees in South Tel Aviv, women and children in battered women's shelters, as well as those living in homeless centers around the city.
I think we are, in a way, saving lives because chronic hunger can lead to very bad illnesses. There are several hundred thousands of children who are in chronic hunger. here in Israel, in this neighborhood particularly. Both Israelis, refugees, disabled people, elderly.
In addition to hot meals, they provide hundreds of people on a weekly basis with fresh produce provided through their partnership with Leket Israel, a ministry dedicated to food rescue.
We feel that with so much food that can be rescued, well, why not bring it to a distressed neighborhood or community where the food could mean so much for them.
Crossroads Cares Relief and Development has partnered with Leket to help bring high-quality food into the hands of more than 1.8 million people who live below the poverty line in Israel. Leket founder Joseph Gittler says they do this by collecting excess cooked food, as well as fruits and vegetables left by farmers who simply can't harvest their entire crop.
Leket is one of the 3 biblical concepts, Leket, Shikha, Upeah, which describe the relationship of farmers with the poor, right? Farmers in ancient times, those were the business people. We see it most profoundly in the book of Ruth, where Boaz is, of course, doing this biblical commandment of Leket, leaving a corner of his field for the poor. And not only does he get rewarded by people coming and picking in his field, but he meets his eventual second wife, Ruth. And really what's beautiful about that concept of gleaning, of leaving what falls off your wagon. We've been fortunate here in Leket to have taken something which was technically an ancient precept which doesn't exist anymore, and been able to utilize it for modern times where farmers, because of modern economics, are just leaving fruits and vegetables in the field, and they were just waiting for someone to be able to figure out how to get that stuff.
Orna did not know where to turn to find food. Living with a disability and with no work, she was thankful for the fresh fruit and vegetables provided by Leket.
We get everything from them. We get fruits and vegetables, we get salt, we get sugar, oil, flour, eggs, sometimes pasta, and I just really appreciate everything they do for us.
Every donation of every dollar can bring in 4 meals. The way we operate, which is a very low cost, very efficient.
The opportunity to increase and feed more of those who need it most is a constant goal Leket strives for. But with the resources near capacity, there simply is not the manpower to rescue all the food available.
We think we're getting maybe 7% what's available, so hopefully everyone who's watching this will help us be able to do a lot more in the future.
Did you know almost 2 million people, or 1 in 5, live below the poverty line in Israel? Many of them are Holocaust survivors, the elderly, and children. Crossroads Cares Relief and Development is committed to alleviating hunger amongst the country's most vulnerable. By partnering with Leket Israel, fresh, healthy meals are delivered to over 175,000 people each week. Would you please consider supporting our efforts so we can continue to bless people in Israel? Please go to crossroads.ca/cares and give today.
While summer holidays are a much-needed time that many people take to refresh and rejuvenate, for many, the hurt in their lives doesn't stop. And neither can the healing message of God's love that Crossroads broadcasts each and every day, all summer long. So we'll be hard at work, creating and broadcasting our programs on air and online to millions of viewers each week, introducing thousands to new and renewed life with Jesus as we answer 1,200 calls every day on our 24/7 prayer lines, acquiring and creating children's content to bring positive Christian values to their smartphones, and much more. While you refresh your soul this summer, know that your donation to Crossroads will keep the message of Jesus in front of people who don't yet know his life-changing love. Because hurt takes no holiday. Healing shouldn't either. Give today at crossroads.ca/donate or call us at 1-800-265-3100.
On July 24th, 2018, my next guest lost the love of his life and instantly became a single father of 4 little girls. Jonathan Pitt's wife, Winter, was a well-known blogger, author, and founder of For Girls Like You magazine. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's good to be with you, Maggie.
Yeah. So I remember scrolling through my Instagram feed. I follow you and Winter and a couple of your family members when I heard of Winter's passing. What exactly happened?
She had it's called cardiac dysrhythmia, but basically her heart got off rhythm. She had a heart murmur, which played a part in that, and it was completely tragic for my youngest 3 girls and I that were there, and for her, it was kind of instantaneously moving into the arms of Jesus. And so it was crazy time in our lives, and God's been really gracious since then. But yeah, it was all heart related.
Yeah.
So.
And I know probably people have asked you so many times how you're doing, but how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, honestly, people say, how are you doing this? And I'm like, only God and Christ in me, the hope of glory. It's not something I feel like I'm doing, but almost like I'm just existing and just trusting God, and God's been faithful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my story, that God's been faithful and kind and generous in so many different ways. And so his provision has been unbelievable. So yeah.
I know you and Winter really were invested in pouring back into your children and being able to give parents tools on how to raise especially young girls. How do you continue that as now a single dad? I mean, the importance of a dad's role in a girl's life is so important.
Yeah.
And now doing that solo by yourself.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm not doing it by myself. So, you know, Winter and I wrote a book together called She Is Yours, Trusting God as You Raise the Girl He Gave You. That the reality is that as dads, as moms even, that we're stewards. And so on my best day, I'm a steward that God has given a task of helping him to raise. And so they are his daughters first, my daughters second. And so in moments where I feel like I'm not providing perfectly, or I'm not disciplining perfectly, or I'm not being kind enough, or whatever it is, like I go to my dad, who is also their dad, and just trust that he's going to provide for us. And I've had many of those moments, obviously, just in this last season. But God's been good and faithful, and he's been a dad to me, and he's been a dad to his girls. So.
I love that. And also the family that you have around you who have supported you through this. What would you say to fathers watching who are still struggling with finding out what their role is, and just struggling with the importance of a dad being even present in their child's life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just look for where God's looking to plug in others around you. For me, you know, one of the beautiful things is that the day of my wife's funeral, my oldest sister, who's 41 years old, never been married, no kids, said, hey, if you need me, Jonathan, like, I'll drop everything, I'll be there. And I'm like naive enough to be like, I think I'm good. Like, don't worry about it. And I moved states because we were moving for me to pastor at Church of the City in Franklin from Dallas. And like 2 weeks in, I'm like, Carmen, I think I need you. And so my sister has been God's provision to me, and at some level a helpmate, and at levels for my kids, like a surrogate mom. And so God has filled my gaps with her, and I believe that God would want to fill in every gap that a single dad might have, for example, with some other type of provision. And it might look like mine, it might not, but ultimately he's going to provide. So praying and trusting God for whatever he has to fill in gaps for our kids, our daughters. It's needed, because we can't do it all.
Yeah. And how are your girls doing?
They're doing good. You know, they've all dealt with their grief in different ways, and what's been beautiful for me is now, we're about almost a year out, like ultimately, like I know that they have a confidence and a trust in a big God, and there's just a reality that if you didn't know what they've gone through, that you wouldn't know, because they're lovely girls, they're straight A students, they are all in activities, and God's just been really gracious to them, and that's the greatest blessing in my life, because the hardest thing for me as a dad has been helping them grieve well, and so to see where they are right now is I'm really grateful for it.
And it's a testament to you and Winter, just imparting faith and understanding in who Jesus is as they get older.
Well, I'll give more credit to Winter, because ultimately the thing I knew about her, she had a hard life. Like, her dad was a drug addict. She grew up in a single parent home with her mom and her grandmom. And I watched a girl become a survivor who had really difficult circumstances. And now I'm just kind of watching her daughters repeat that. You know, it's difficult circumstances. And I'm watching them lean into God's love and just, you know, at some level pull themselves up by their bootstraps and say, I'm not a victim. And I'm a victor in God, you know, so.
So we see, you know, you're handsome, you're strong, you look like you're confident in this time. But I'm just thinking of our friends watching who might have just lost a wife, who are just really struggling to get out of that, knowing that they have children in the next room that they have to take care of. How has your faith played a significant role in helping you to stand up and be sitting here today?
Yeah, well, I don't always look like this with my suit jacket on, my hair done. I mean, ultimately, I remember the first couple of weeks being really dark for me, and just having this feeling of my wife's at the funeral home, or my wife's in the ground, or like those kind of feelings, like just cold, dark, dreary days. And the beautiful thing is that God's light shone through all that. And so day by day, I've I think growing stronger. And my faith was there all along. Like, even from the day that she took her last breath, the moment she took her last breath, I was singing in her ear, just reminding myself of who God is and reminding her of where she was going. But ultimately, you know, like, just lean into God's love, because ultimately that's all we really have, and our relationships are all we have, and enjoy them while you have them, because you just never know how long they'll be there. But, you know, for that dad that's just lost a spouse, or that, you know, anybody that's lost a loved one, like, ultimately, that the moment that loved one left, if they are in Jesus, is not a moment where they're going to see them again. Yeah. And so there's hope in that. Yeah. There's hope in the cross. There's hope that we have. And, like, I've said that for years and years and years, and I've experienced loss at different levels and had to believe that. But this is the closest it's been, and I can say that God's really been faithful. Yeah, and I trust that.
And what is probably the biggest lesson that you've learned from Winter, and just, you know, being her husband for 15 years?
Yeah, so Winter was a really introverted girl, quiet girl. She was a peacemaker. She was not a people pleaser. And so for me, I was moving fast and people pleasing and all that. And there's two pictures above my bed, and one says be, the other one says still. And that was Winter. That was the air she breathed. She was not rushed about things. She was not hurried about things. Even though she was doing big things for the Lord, like in her writings and all that, deadlines didn't bother her. She never felt like hard pressed to do anything. And
she was present.
Yeah, she's present. And so for me, like, that's actually been the hardest thing for me to do, is be present, especially in my grief. And so those words above my bed, like, every day I look at them, it's Winter telling me, just be still, Jonathan. Like, God's got this. God's got the girls. God's got you. He's going to provide. You don't have to you don't have to do it for him, you know. So that's probably it.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for sharing with us today.
Yeah, glad to be with you. So.
And I hope what Jonathan said really resonates with you if you're celebrating Father's Day today. Maybe you've had a struggle with your father. Maybe you don't have great memories of your dad, or maybe you have excellent memories of your dad, or maybe you're a dad right now that just is struggling to just be present and be still with your children. I want you to know that our prayer lines are always available, prayer partners that would love to pray with you, encourage you, and remind you of, as exactly what Jonathan said, we have a heavenly Father that loves you deeply, cares about you so much, knows every hair on your head, knows exactly what you're going through, and wants to be present in your life. The phone number is at the bottom of your screen, 1-866-273-4444, or you can email prayer@crossroads.ca. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's no more powerful a Father's Day gift that you can give your dad than total forgiveness, acceptance, release.
Do you talk to God about His plans for you? Are you often busy, feeling like time is just slipping away? Do you tend to focus on the far-off future, or are you feeling stretched by daily demands? Why not pause and pray?
You'd be able to say, "Good morning, Lord. What do you have in store for me today?"
What If God Wrote Your To-Do List by New York Times bestselling author J. Payleitner will help you embrace opportunities to grow closer to God, reach out to others, and take better care of yourself. This is a to-do list for your soul.
Small things matter. You don't know what you're doing today that's gonna lead to greater things.
God is calling you to make the most of each day and live life to the fullest. And Crossroads wants to help you do just that. When you make a suggested donation of $45 or more this month, be sure to request a copy of this book as our thanks for your ministry support. Call 1-800-265-3100 or visit crossroads.ca/donate.
We were talking about the opioid crisis that's happening, and one of the things that's important to mark down, next Tuesday, June 18th, we're going to have an event here in the Crossroads Center at the Huntley Street Studios. You can get a ticket for that. The information is on the screen, crossroads.ca/giveacare. And we also want people to go online, and if you can't get here, you can join us, stream it. And the most important thing, Maggie, is to be praying.
Yeah, and have conversation with people around you about this issue and how can you effectively pray. So this is a great event to tune into or come and be here in the studios. Stuart Cameron, who's one of the co-hosts of the event, as well as our Chief Executive Officer, Lorna Duick, will be hosting the event. You recently sat down with Stuart and chatted a little bit about this. He is a young man that has been affected personally by this crisis. Look at this.
The growing number of overdoses and deaths caused by painkillers is a health emergency and really a spiritual emergency. The statistics are staggering. From January 2016 to September 2018, more than 10,000 people have died from this epidemic in Canada. And last year, there were more than 3,200 deaths, and 93% were accidental. Now, here at 100 Huntley Street, we want to help in this crisis. Stuart Cameron is a recovery advocate. Stuart, welcome to the program.
It's my honor.
Why are you so passionate about this epidemic that's happening here in Canada?
Well, I myself am in recovery, but last year, December 30th, 2018, I lost my best friend, my brother, Daniel Beatty, to this crisis. I'm wearing his jacket right now, so everything I do for this is in his honor.
So you have seen, obviously, firsthand, you know of others that have died. And I think the thing that really is surprising, 93% are accidental. People, they take these painkillers and they're addicted. There's people that are dying that really just kind of, in a sense, stumbled into this.
Yeah, mostly people who overdose from this don't even know that fentanyl is in their drug. People who do cocaine and heroin, stuff like that. Fentanyl is mixed in with it, and they do a line or they take a hit. Next thing you know, they're passing out and they choke or they just overdose. And because it's a depressant and it stops the heart, stops the breathing, and if nobody's around to save them, they're going to die.
Opioids, people really never heard a lot about it, but it's in the news, and actually the education part is important. So here at Crossroads, we're going to have a special event. It's an initiative. Tell me about what we can learn and what we can do to speak into this crisis.
So on Tuesday, June 18th, here at Crossroads, we're going to have an opioid summit, and that's going to have a lot of guest speakers and a lot of people coming in who are going to share their experience. And the educational piece is so important because we want to break down the stigma of what an addict looks like. People think that it's a choice to do that, but there's a lot of mental health issues. Addiction is actually a mental health issue. So we want to break that stigma down and show that these people are people and not just people who are choosing to live that way.
And that is so important, Stuart, and that's part of the whole accidental thing, people falling into this. But it is quickly becoming, between the ages of 30 to 39, the leading cause of death amongst Canadians. But it's beyond that.
Yes.
It's younger people and it's older people as well.
Yeah, it affects everybody. It doesn't matter religion, ethnicity. There's a lot of people who won't even come out and admit that they're struggling with this right now because of this stigma. So that's why it's so important that we're doing this to break down that stigma, because it affects everybody everywhere.
So it's not only the education, Stuart, but our part here at Crossroads. Yes, we want to get the education, but also the spiritual dimension. How important is prayer?
Well, prayer is so important. I can say for my friend that one key component that he might have missed is the spiritual aspect of it. Addiction is a disease of disconnect, and I know for myself that if it wasn't for God and having that spiritual connection, which allows me to connect with other people, I'd still be lost. So that piece is so key.
Well, thank you, Stuart, and we appreciate your work, your passion. I mean, this is a hard situation that we're going through. So we want you to join us right here in the Crossroads studio in Burlington, Ontario. And as Stuart mentioned, on June 18th, we're going to gather for prayer. We're going to learn. We're going to commit to trying to understand God's heart in this crisis situation. So you can join us live stream. You can host an event in your home, in your church, and you can find out about how to get resources, how you can log in and be a part of this big prayer meeting in this epidemic, this crisis, by going to crossroads.ca/give-a-care.
Canadians are slowly waking up to the predator claiming lives in plague proportions. In less than 3 years, opioids have killed more than 10,300 Canadians. 93% were unintentional. It's time to give a care. Join us on June 18th at Crossroads Studios in Burlington for an evening of prayer and testimonies from opioid overcomers. Or make a difference in your community by hosting a live screening of this event at your home, school, or church. Visit crossroads.ca/give-a-care.
So glad you're with us right now. We are asking and answering the question, God hope? God hope, question mark. Do we have hope? If we do, we've been learning all week in Romans chapter 8, if we have hope, it's going to be visible upon our lives. It must make a difference upon how we think, what we say, and how we live as well. That's the power and the impact of Jesus Christ. Again, so you say, well, help me out, Robbie. How do I know if I have hope? God's word's very clear. Here's our outline for the week. If we truly have hope, our value system simply changes. That's how Paul endures the sufferings he went through. It's the power of his hope as he looks for the glory in Jesus Christ. Again, it changes our value system. Secondly, I love this one. If we have hope, we groan. We will groan. We are supposed to groan. It is good to groan. Groaning for what? Groaning for our redemption. It's not groaning, murmuring, and complaining. That's sinful groaning. True righteous groaning is longing for my completion in Jesus Christ. And thirdly, if we have hope, I love this too, if we have hope, hope waits with eager patience. And so, what does that mean, wait with eager patience? Well, that's why we turn to the Word of God. Romans 8, verse 23. Again, notice it says here, we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Holy Spirit, we groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now, notice it says, now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? That's a fair question. But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. So what I want to point out here, the word hope is used 5 times in these 3 verses. That's significant. That's definitely what the theme is here by the Holy Spirit. But the word wait, the verb wait, is used 2 times. But notice, wait is used in 2 very different ways. The first time wait is used is that we wait eagerly. If we have hope, we are to wait eagerly. Behind the original here in the text, it means to strain your neck. We are to anticipate. We are expecting, again, our hope to be realized in Jesus Christ. But at the same time, it says in verse 25, we are to wait with patience. And patience here means perseverance. So it's interesting, right here in 3 verses, God's word tells us we are to wait expectantly or eagerly. At the same time, we are to wait with patience. You're like, is that a contradiction? Not at all. Here's how John Stott describes it so wonderfully. John Stott says this, we are to wait neither so eagerly that we lose our patience, right? That we get so restless that we're kind of out of control, nor though wait so patiently that we lose our expectation. But rather, if we are filled with hope, we wait with eagerly and we wait with patience together. That's so good, right? So even right now, as this text is being taught over you, there should be a growing expectation. My mind is being renewed. At the same time, we are willing to endure. We are willing to persevere. For what God has started, God will finish. And we know, right in Romans 8, that God works all things together for good for those who love Him and are waiting patiently for His arrival. One of the great indicators that we truly have hope. We are eagerly expecting Him. At the same time, we're willing to be patient, knowing that God's timing is not our own timing. Do we have hope? I hope you do. Some of you right now, you're like, man, I want hope. How do I get hope? His name is Jesus. Jesus Christ is the hope of the world. He came to be light in your darkness. He came to be life over death. He came to be hope over despair. And you are called right now to call us, 1-866-273-4444. Someone waiting for you in the line to love you and to fill you with the truth of the hope found only in Jesus. May that be your story today.
And boy, do we need hope. I like he was talking about how we're groaning. Because Maggie, when we look at this world, we want it to be better. Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do with, you know, the various ministries that we support around the world and humanitarian work and this program. And I get frustrated. Like, come on, it's got to get better. Yeah. But there's this hope that we are looking forward to, and we're groaning for that, the Bible talks about. And there will be a time and there will be a day when it'll all be coming together. But until that point, we need to have that hope. If we don't, we get despair.
Yeah, and I think that's a reason why we need to pray, especially as we think about the opioid crisis and all that's happening in our world. We can look at the news and we could either just be overwhelmed with fear, or we can pray that God will allow this solution to be revealed to us. So thanks so much for joining. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a member of the Canadian Council of Christian Charities. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 4M2.
Deeks Insurance is a proud sponsor of the 100 Huntley Street studio.